Hi, my name's Andy Nash and I'm here to talk about these two woodcut prints from John Haywood, who's one of our esteemed lecturers at South Staffordshire College. And these two pieces of work are actually, they're important for two reasons. The first one is that John sticks to a traditional Japanese wood block cutting technique to make the work, which requires hours of painstaking work cutting out from a wood block the various images, and then printing over, and then printing over, and then reworking, and then printing over using different colours. So on the one hand, the aesthetic and the technical skills are, admirable, but also there's a concept at play in these works, and both of these come from a series of woodcuts that John has made. And this one is really about how he describes a traditional Chinese tea room. And in the first image, we see as if we are looking through the window into the tea room, and you can see the water cascading down the front of the glass there. And inside, you see two people in this tea shop leaning over, quite forlorn, it looks like, over their tea, with the vapours drifting up into the space there. In the second image, we are now inside the tea shop, and we're sitting at a table, and we can see that we still have two people, the two same people characters on the other side of the shop, still looking forlorn, kind of breathing in the fumes. And if you look at the decoration on the table, we have two motifs. We have the poppy motif and the flower of the poppy, and we also have the tea motif on the cups and the pots and the saucers. And these are interesting motifs and important motifs because the work is also about colonialism in China and how we took tea from the Chinese and we gave them opium. Seemed to be a good sort of a deal at the time, but as a result, it does highlight the hypocrisy and the controversy around, states owning states and empires owning empires. So it's a bit of a statement about the British Empire and the colonialism that was created and laid down way back in the day.
Hello, my name is Chris Hopkins. I'm the Director of Faculty at South Staffordshire College for Creative and Digital. I'm here to talk about my piece, Rewind and Repeat. This is a piece that I've enjoyed making in terms of the processes, but equally the content is something that I've kind of grappled with for many months now, but also something that reflects the work I've done previously as a student myself. Quite often the work that I was kind of drawn to was kind of war related and looked at aspects of conflict, and I made a piece a good 30 odd years ago now that kind of reflected aspects of World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust. And fast forward to now and the tragic events which are happening at the moment in Gaza and the Gaza Strip, it brought home to me some of the similarities of what we're seeing now as to the images that you see of the Holocaust, the initial start of the Holocaust, and the events that happened in Krakow and Warsaw ghettos, and people being forced out of their homes and into ghetto areas and segregation and so on. So that's kind of the initial catalyst for the artwork. But another element was the fact that we'd invested in some new equipment at the college, and it was a chance to kind of explore using those new practices in the work that I was creating. And I have to say that I found using the laser cutter a really exciting opportunity to kind of explore that setting of ideas in a new medium, which I probably wouldn't have tried previously. Overall, I'm happy with the way the work has turned out. I think it kind of creates an interesting talking point between kind of past histories and again current situations which are happening now as we speak. And as one of the collaborators who worked to support me in making the piece said, you know, do we ever learn? And unfortunately, history is littered with examples of that always being the question that should be answered. Thanks very much.
Right, so this piece of work particularly is a graphic novel concept illustration, and my interest in this particularly, because it's set in Lichfield, is kind of trying to depict in a painting the day that aliens actually visit Lichfield. So the idea behind it is that the aliens have landed in Lichfield on one stormy night, and they're kind of landing in front of the cathedral. You can see the cathedral in the back there, and the fires and the various explosions and the atmosphere. And just this idea I had about the fact that linking it to the Civil War of Lichfield, I'm quite interested in the history of Lichfield, and once upon a time in the 1600s there was a civil war here, and the cathedral was used as a royalist stronghold for a time, and horses were housed in the cathedral. So this idea really is the fact that these aliens have come out of the sky, you know, and they're kind of landing, flying through the air, and they're kind of harnessing these horses and galloping round the close and the sort of the ditches and the moat and that sort of area that we had at the time in Lichfield. So it's a kind of local interest mixed with hopefully a kind of quite contemporary idea regarding graphic novel illustration. So my piece of work, The Forlorn Lady of Shalott, this for me is a kind of a new way of working. I'm primarily known as a 2D artist, and painting tends to be my main concern. What I particularly wanted to do with this piece was to delve into the world of the pre-Raphaelites, which is a particular interest of mine. I've been attending the community classes here as a way of developing my own practical skills in art, which I'm finding most enjoyable. And this piece of work particularly is my favourite painting. It's a depiction of my favourite painting by John William Waterhouse, pre-Raphaelite artist that is very well known. And I was very pleased with the result. It's a mixture of modelling, using clay obviously, and using the slab making technique to create the boat. The scale of it is maybe a little bit larger than I expected it to be when I initially started it, but that, you know, has worked quite well. And then the firing process is something that I'm learning about, the glazing, etc. That didn't go quite to plan. The colours as they came out, as it was fired, weren't quite what I expected. So I enhanced that with acrylic paint. And I tried to capture the texture of the details of this beautiful painting, really. The fascination really with this type of work, it's the kind of realism of nature mixed in with the beautiful medieval fantasy imagery that I'm so fond of. So I hope you enjoy looking at it. And this is the start of a new venture for me, and there will be more to come, hopefully, along a similar line.
My name's Helen Hextall. I'm an artist and illustrator. I work here as a learning support assistant. I have two pieces in the gallery. One of them is a collection of images of the Green Man. The Green Man is a mythical person who shows up on ecclesiastical and secular buildings all throughout Europe from the medieval period. Nobody really knows what he means. It could be that he symbolises the passage of life and death and life again, because he has foliage sprouting from his face. But he's a sort of constant of European culture. And culture and the way that people respond to the natural world has always interested me, natural history being part of my everyday life, and the response to that from people through myth and folklore. And the other piece that I have here are of 3 different faces, and they all have an ethereal quality to them. One of them being my daughter, and she's a sort of she's been made from stardust, like all of us have been. I find that very captivating. The middle face is Miranda from Shakespeare, and she is ethereal to me because although she was a great beauty which men fought over, it was actually her inner beauty that was what was most important. And my other piece has a lady who seems to be wearing a mask, but what if she isn't? I think we're all in society told that everybody wears masks these days, but sometimes people do actually just tell you what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and what they need. And that's my artwork.
So my name's Caris McNerlin. I'm an art and design lecturer at South Staffordshire College, Lichfield College. So the painting that I'm talking about is called In a Birmingham Park. It portrays 4 children, their relatives, and the great-great-grandchildren of my great-great-grandmother who lived in Ireland, in Dublin. My great-grandmother lived there as well, and so did my grandfather. So I visited Ireland and I was drawn to a painting by Walter Osborne called In a Dublin Park, Light and Shade. This was an oil on canvas. My painting's acrylic, watercolour, mixed media on canvas. The In a Dublin Park, Light and Shade by Walter Osborne was completed in the late 1800s, 1895, and is housed in the National Gallery of Ireland. I also looked at an artist called Sarah Purser and her work, where she overcame many restrictions placed on women at the time, playing a pivotal role in the development of modern Irish art. So this is again around the late 1800s. She produced paintings of scenes of everyday life, portraits of friends and family members as well, and also used oils in the same way that Walter Osborne did. Often Walter Osborne's work captured those of poor people within the city, and there was quite a lot of change in Dublin at that time. So it's a story of great contrast. So on one hand, the century oversaw huge advances in design and engineering. On the other, poverty and disease were endemic, and the population of Europe's most compact cities was almost 500,000 by the end of the century. So there's a lot of transition to transient city at that time. So I was really interested in personal histories and my own personal history. And at the time when just before my grandfather was born, so my great-grandmother would have been living in the city at the same time that Sarah Purser would have been painting scenes in the city, as well as Walter Osborne as well. So I was interested in that. I took some paintings, some quick paintings when I went to Dublin, some quick drawings, and I also took some photographs on benches. And then when I came back, I realised that I had this image that I'd already taken of the grandchildren in the Midlands that I wanted to paint. So within the painting, I've got scenes of landscapes as well. So if you look on the left-hand side, the bottom left-hand side of the painting, and this references other parts of Ireland, so County Cork and around that area. There's also some text as well within the painting, and this is a Gaelic word, an Irish word for family, for children, often children that are related. There's a contrast as well in the painting of light and dark, but a lot more obvious, maybe a lot more stark than the painting that Walter Osborne had done in a Dublin Park. But really it's exploring that kinship between the young cousins, and they're sitting here and capturing a normal, usual scene, and they're just enjoying an ice cream. Maybe they're looking for a ball and sort of engaging with each other. So that's the painting. I did initially start with a smaller version and then enlarged it, and I'm really glad I did because I haven't painted on this scale for a little while. So that's it. Lots of history connected to Dublin, to Ireland, but also to Birmingham as well, where my family then came over and lived.
The piece is called You'll Have to Excuse Me, I Have a Condition, in polychromos, colouring pencils, Copic ink and gold leaf. I've been an avid movie enthusiast since the late 1980s, and the release of Beetlejuice and Batman as a small child cemented my love of pop culture, the gothic and macabre. Jack Nicholson's Joker from the original 1989 Tim Burton Batman was the ultimate villain, and in my opinion remained unrivaled until the Joaquin Phoenix interpretation in the 2019 Todd Phillips masterpiece Joker. In Phillips's reimagined version, Phoenix plays Arthur Fleck, a tormented and bullied man with a mental health condition that causes him to laugh when he's anxious. This causes situations where his anxiety leads to further bullying and a vicious cycle. Whilst this is a comic book movie with caricatures from the pages of graphic novels and fictitious situations, it struck a chord with many, reflecting the day-to-day challenges faced by those with misunderstood mental health conditions and neurodivergence. Whilst other portrayals have been unrealistic and superheroic, with powers and abilities, this is the first of the movies to see Arthur as a real person, with issues that we can all empathise with in some way. This piece shows the character of Arthur and the Joker intertwined. The inner conflict of interests Arthur faces is to remain a good person, despite facing adversity and his own angry mind. But by the end of the movie, his troubled Joker alter ego has become his main persona.
Hello, my name is Greg Mason. I'm an artist and illustrator, and I'm influenced by the macabre and body horror found in film, specifically 1980s film. I suppose I like to draw inspiration from the visceral and the unsettling. My work explores the darker aspects of human existence, often delving into themes of transformation and decay, and the fragility of the flesh. I think through art, or whatever it is that I create, I try to seek to evoke a sense of unease. Why I do that, I'm not really sure. Most of my works, including this one, are unnamed. I think I like to let the viewer make up their mind about what it's about, because I don't really have a solid idea of what it's about either. I just like to paint what I paint.
Hello, it's Claire Pinder-Smith here, Curriculum Manager for Creative Arts. Here you can see the piece that I've created for the staff show, and it's probably worth pointing out here, I'm not actually an artist. This is a skill I've tried to develop since joining the college, and it's been quite supported by the college, which has been really great. What I've created here are two prints that represent the same image. One has been hand-drawn using Procreate on the iPad, and the other has been generated by artificial intelligence. The point of this is, are we able to tell which is which? The AI image took a few seconds to generate and was generated based on the original hand-drawn image. Now, the hand-drawn illustration took me about an hour and a half and is based on a reference image, so it is a copy. So at what point does a piece of work become original? You could argue that neither of these are original because one's AI generated and one is hand-drawn based on a reference image, but the two pieces coming together create their own original piece of work.
Hi, so my name's Andy Nash, and this is my piece of work that I've installed. It's actually a collaborative piece between me and a photographer, Katie Myatt, and it's always a good opportunity when you're collaborating with somebody who's in a different sort of subject than you are, because you're learning from them and they're learning from you, and it really is a creative conflict of interests, creative interests that is. So this photograph is called Stonehenge Harbour, and it's a double exposed image, and the process around this collaboration was that we both of us, Katie and myself, had a camera with a 35mm film. So they're not digital, these are film cameras. And we spent a few days over half term in Wiltshire photographing the prehistoric landscape. This one this image depicts Stonehenge, as you can see. And then what you do is, once you've fired off all of your film, you rewind the camera, but then you load the film back onto it. So you don't wind it off, you just rewind it to the start and then reload it, and then swap cameras. When you're swapping your camera with somebody, it's at that moment where you know that you've taken some really good photographs and you don't know what's going to come out of it. But likewise, they are also giving you their camera, which has got all their work on it, for you to abuse. And so we then went up to Scotland, and we spent a couple of days again in Scotland photographing the prehistoric landscape, and over the same film. So you get this double exposure. And out of the 70 or so images that we took, maybe half a dozen were worthy of exhibition, and this is one of the better ones. So there is a bit of a creative risk that you're taking. We call it serendipity or happy accidents that take place, and but you never know what you're going to get, and it's not like you can do something like this on Photoshop. It's very much about living in the moment. And so here we see Stonehenge and a lake or a loch up in Scotland, and it appears to show Stonehenge flooded. And you can see this this pond here with the boats all tied to it, makes it look a little bit like the boats have been tied up to the stones. And in my mind, as a creative person, it talks more about environmental change. It talks about the rise in sea levels. It also talks about, you know, what was Stonehenge used for. Maybe once upon a time it was flooded, and people did use it as a boat to harbour up. Either way, have a go at doing a collaborative project with somebody else. Have 2 film cameras. Think of a theme each. Our theme was natural environment and prehistoric environments, and you just go at it, take photographs, and then see what happens, and you'll be amazed at the results. They don't all come out well, but the ones that do come out brilliantly, and you'll never be able to recreate these in any other way. It's a really good collaborative project to get involved with. Double photograph exposures.
Hi, my name's Lindsay Brown. I'm a media lecturer. This is a piece called Temptation. It's a digital print from DSLR, 24mm 1.4. So Temptation are 2 separate images taken in the streets of Tokyo. They focus on the work culture in Japan and addressing the temptation to break away from the mundane, either inviting a passerby into a bar or a salaryman run into the next izakaya.
Where fine art meets game art, a digital interpretation of Edward Hopper's iconic masterpiece, Nighthawks. This contemporary piece pays homage to the timeless essence of Hopper's original, capturing the essence of urban loneliness and offering a fresh perspective on the universal themes that continue to resonate with audiences today.
Hi, I'm Dan Simcox, art and design lecturer, and this is a piece that I've created for a series called What Cannot Be Seen. So this is a series that I started creating several years ago based on walking in the landscape. So I'm an avid mountaineer and rock climber, and being in the landscape is something that I love and really enjoy doing. And I've taken photographs for many years, but those photographs have often not quite captured the environment that I feel like you see and I experience in the landscape. So then I started doing a series of paintings and exploring that. And this is one of those, depicting a walk that I did up Triffin in 2018, where we actually got halfway up the mountain and then the weather turned, the storm clouds came across, and yeah, we got completely engulfed in rain and cloud. So we didn't actually make it to the top of the summit of Triffin at that point. We actually backed off, and this is a recollection of that moment. So like much of walking in the landscape, the image of the mountain in our mind is very different to that we actually see. And this is my depiction of what I saw at that time. So originally when I painted it, there was actually a mountain within the landscape. So I started off by painting that. And there was actually a horizon line and things like that, so I depicted it more like what I could originally see, and then eventually I started making it darker and darker and darker and actually blacking out, and what eventually came is this almost black canvas, which has completely gone to abstraction, where you just see some smudges, some marks, which are actually the clouds engulfing and completely swamping me. And I like to think that that impression of being swamped and bombarded by cloud comes across within the painting.
Hiya, I'm Hayley, I'm the fashion tutor. This is my piece of work this year, and it's a continuation really of the work that I did last year in the staff exhibition. My work last year really was about a grieving process. I'd got diagnosed with unprocessed grief. I lost my aunt and uncle, and then my cousin, who was their son, all very closely. My aunt and uncle with COVID, my cousin with MS, and because we were in lockdown I didn't get to see them. So I had this grief that I'd never really come to terms with, because it was a really difficult time for everyone. You know, none of us could see our family, so it was almost like they were still there living at the house. It was very, very strange. But this grieving process, it wasn't managed, and the unprocessed grief that I had started coming out in all different ways. I started to worry about my own health and got more anxiety than I usually had, didn't really want to leave the house. And my work really was a response to that, and it helped that grieving process, quite cathartic in a way. So the work last year consisted of all these black cubes that you can see currently in its manifestation inside the cocoon. And that really reflected Victorian mourning, which I found really interesting to look at. I've always kind of been interested in it, but it kind of helped me face death more, something I always shied away from. So coming to terms with that and actually looking into it really, really helped me come to terms with the loss of my family. This year, I wanted to kind of carry on with that work and kind of display really how I've come to terms with it, and how that journey of making my work last year helped that grieving process and helped me to come to terms with it. So this is what the work is this year. It's a fully woven piece using fabrics. In contrast, I've used white rather than the black, so it directly contrasts that idea of grief and how I've come, you know, through the other side, essentially, really, I suppose. It's this idea of kind of cradling that grief, cocooning it, and just developing on from it. There are still bits of the piece from last year that you can see, and there's bits that are pulled through from the piece from last year, and that's really just to kind of suggest that even though you go through this process and you think that you're managing your grief, and on most accounts I am, and I have, it's always there. You know, you never quite forget, and there's always bits that do come back. So in general, the work has really, really helped me with that grieving process. And I think it's helped my family a little bit as well. They came to see the work and really appreciated the sentiment behind it. And I think it helped them confront a lot of things that maybe they didn't as well. Again, because it was COVID during the time that we lost our family. So yeah, that's my work.